So if you've been watching the Weather Channel, you know that there's been no let-up in the bad weather in the U.S. This morning on his program, Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch showed us a new hail mapping program, and it basically looked like there were lines of hail just marching across the Midwest, mowing things as they went. So it's not a happy situation. And back east, of course, they're expecting more heavy rain in an area where the ground is already saturated. The damage just keeps building up. The end of the world may not be at hand, but we seem to be suffering the death of 1,000 cuts. And all this damage just puts more and more strain on the system. I begin to wonder when the insurance companies are just going to refuse to pay and say, sue us, They are not going to be able to collect enough premiums to compensate for the kind of damage that's going on here. So even though I don't really believe in doom and gloom, I don't really think that we're going to have a total system collapse overnight. It looks like we're having quite a lot of damage build up. The total effect could be quite severe. Now, looking at agro insurance, I see that there are a lot more stories about damage this week than there were last week. And this may be an indicator that the acceleration mentioned by David Dubine on ADAPT 2030 is continuing. Certainly his prediction about that seems to be bearing out pretty well up till now. In El Salvador, this is the 27th, farmers lament brutal drought. Encouraged by a good harvest last year, Maria de Jesus Lopez, a modest farmer, decided to boost her production of corn on the land she rents. But an unexpected drought in El Salvador has cost her the whole harvest. USA, most of Michigan is still experiencing dry conditions. Abnormally dry conditions prevailed over much of the lower peninsula as well as eastern counties of the upper peninsula, while moderate drought conditions continued to be reported in the northeast and Thumb. Despite cooler temperatures throughout the week, continued dry weather was having a negative effect on all crops. There were reports of corn rolling and being slow to tassel due to the lack of moisture. USA in the 27th, bad weather slams cotton. Cotton was lower again on Friday and lower for the week. Bad crop conditions in parts of the U.S. have kept the market supported, but the market worries about demand due to the China tariffs. U.S. crop conditions are fading due to the extreme Texas weather and pockets of problems in other states. Australia, fields suffering severe drought. East Central Australia has been enduring severe drought for an extended period of time. Long-range weather forecasters are now talking about a new El Niño event expected to develop later this year. El Niño events are harsh on eastern Australia agricultural areas, resulting in serious drought quite often. In Ukraine, the grain harvest was slowed down because of rain. Of course, if you have extra rain at harvest time, that's not good for the quality of the crops. Nothing else, you end up having to spend money drying the crops. In the USA, crop yields could be greatly affected by hail. In the USA, much of the Kansas corn crop is in poor shape. The National Agricultural Statistics Service estimated that 21% of the corn grown in Kansas was in very poor condition. About 29% was rated as fair, while 43% was in good and 7% in excellent condition. USA, wheat futures jump as global harvest expectations fall. Germany, drought-damaged wheat could hamper the European wheat supply. Drought in Europe is driving up wheat prices. Bulgaria, wheat production to be reduced. This is all like the 26th and 27th. USA, tornadoes, high wind, and hail caused damage. Iowa farmers had only 5.3 days suitable for field work during the week ending July 22nd. Some farmers had to spend time surveying damage from the tornadoes, high winds, and hail that struck parts of the state July 29. On the 25th, USA, crops continue to show signs of stress. In Minnesota, portions of the state began to recover from flooded fields. However, additional rainfall in some areas led to crops showing continued signs of stress. USA on the 24th. Storms strip leaves from soybeans, damage farm buildings. Chainsaws became the soundtrack this week as Arkansans cleaned up after storms July 21 unleashed a barrage of large hail, high winds, and lightning that left behind downed trees, damaged homes, farms and businesses, and thousands without electricity. More than 63,000 people were without power as utilities scrambled to scout damage and bring linemen from other states to help restore electricity. USA on the 24th, drought forcing farmers to sell off cattle early at a loss. The heat is taking a toll on the cattle ranching industry in North Texas, forcing owners to sell earlier than normal. Because of the drought, the Decatur livestock market has seen almost twice the number of cattle being brought in. Conditions are forcing ranchers to sell their cattle too soon and costing them thousands of dollars. With the hot and dusty weather, ranchers are going to auctions early and selling their cattle at a loss. Germany is still unclear about the size of their wheat crop due to drought. Multiple stories about that. Finland, the lowest grain harvest of the 21st century. Ireland, how crimping can save drought-stressed crops. Canada, farmers whose crops were wiped out by the late June frost in Nova Scotia may get access to some emergency financial assistance from a relief program. USA, heat affecting local farmers. With a lack of rain in central Texas, farmers are struggling to harvest their corn. Robert Fleming of Fleming Grain and Cattle sees only one thing as he looks at this farm. It's going to be a real big disappointment for all the agricultural community here in central Texas. 23rd, U.S. Dry conditions putting damper on Westman crops. Not sure where this is located, but he's saying that, by this time of year, the corn should be up to his waist and it's not there. Philippines is giving up on a goal of having self-sufficiency in rice, probably because they can't raise enough. And that's pretty much everything since the 22nd.